Okay, welcome listeners and viewers. Here we are again at another episode of Compliance in Motion. And as you know, it's the podcast where we dive deep into the stories, strategies, and systems that power real world workplace safety. And I'm your host, Tony DeAscentis, CEO and co-founder of Ving. And whether you're on the floor, in the field, or back at the front office, we're going to talk today about some tips and insights and experiences that you're going to find really helpful to you and your safety and compliance. First off, join me with a big welcome with Bob Marich of Environmental Health and Safety Manager at Eastern Surfaces. Bob, welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for carving some time out for us today.
Thank you for having me today.
Yep. So what I understand about your background, Bob, is that you're really spanning over 2 decades of experience in things like asset protection, safety, spanning a broad range of injuries from the grocery industry to big box and to stone fabrication. Tell us a little bit more about your journey and what led you to be at your current place, Eastern Surfaces.
Yeah, so like you said, Tony, I was in the grocery industry for about 15 years in the loss prevention, asset protection, and risk management departments. And that's really where I took a liking to the safety side of it. After my experience with the grocery industry, I went to a big box store, was the safety manager there for a couple years, wanted to get out of retail. And decided to put my number in the hat for a position at Eastern Surfaces here as the safety manager. So that's how it all started. So I've been here for
Right.
about 5 years now.
So they pulled your number out of the hat, looked at your experiences, and said, "You're
Sure,
the man." five
absolutely.
5 years of it. So, what really attracted you to be in the safety industry? Was there a certain aspect of it that, like, you particularly were motivated to say, I like doing this. I like, well, like, what are the one or two things that like rose to the top?
Yeah, I really like working one-on-one with people, and there's nothing greater than keeping somebody safe. One of my mottos is remember safety. Your family is waiting for you at home. And that's kind of like the motto that I go by, because we want you to go home just as safe as you did come to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. Out of all the interviews that I do, and listeners, if you're an individual out there that's thinking about a career in safety and becoming a safety professional, one of the common threads that is really across all of the people that I talk to about their motivation is they care about people, which is a no-brainer because you're in safety, because and
Right.
you're helping people to not get injured on the job. But it's interesting because I don't know. I'd have to go back, Bob. I can't say that I've ever had anybody say that wasn't kind of their primary motivation is they like working with people. They like that one-on-one. They like
Right.
helping, empower them to do a great job. And that really sets the tone for your culture
Right.
in the company. And lately, we've seen more and more companies in the fabrication industry and in their space talking about safety as a culture and sometimes even as a competitive advantage. What do you think is the biggest mindset shift at your organization as you go from thinking about just safety as a box to check versus safety as a culture? How do you lead and manage people to that point?
Well, I think the biggest shift has been moving from just following rules to actually caring about each other. It's not about just compliance anymore. It's about taking ownership. Everybody taking ownership, not just the managers, not just the safety manager, but the guys and gals down on the floor too. Um, Guys watching out for each other, speaking up, before a lift or checking vacuum seals for each other, asking for help instead of pushing through a task, which could, cause an injury if it's overwhelming to somebody. I think that's when you really know that the safety culture is implemented and it's not just a checklist anymore.
Yeah, that looking out for each other, especially in your kind of environments where we've got these big slabs moving around and there's forklifts and there's it's
Right.
loud and there's a lot going on in the space and people have
Hmm.
to look out for each other. So when you think about that, how do you help the teams stay personally invested in that safety culture day after day? Is it in your messaging? Is it incentive? Is it this is just the way we are, or like what's the reinforcement pattern there?
Well, we don't have an incentive program. For one of the reasons is, we want people to report near misses and we want them to report their accidents so we can, prevent them from recurrence. So we do our root cause analysis and we grow from there. And it's just the culture of, being on the floor all the time,
Yeah.
keeping communications open and building a rapport with all of the workers, including the management, me as a safety manager, that they're not afraid to come to us with anything.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting. You bring up the fact that you do not have an incentive program. This is kind of like a thing out there in our space of safety, anyhow. It's almost like a 50-50. Some companies have it, some
Sure.
companies don't. I'm
Right.
kind of a proponent of you don't have an incentive program for safety because this is part of what you do. It should be
Yeah.
like as it should just be a habit. It should be something that your experience level brings along. It sounds
Sure.
like that's how you guys think about it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's our reasoning for not having it.
Yeah. So when you
Hmm.
think about like individuals out in the field and in the shop and things like that,
Hmm.
it's expected that you don't need to have a special incentive program to do it. Now, those who have incentive programs to do it, I've also talked to a bunch of them where their incentive program doesn't necessarily focus on reporting things as much as it does discovery of a new process or
Sure.
a new way of doing things. And those kinds of things are all over the place. Now, when you
Right.
think about the materials,
Hmm.
and how things are changing in your industry, I mean, there's all kinds of material innovation and going on, new materials like engineered quartz,
Right.
to change and changing regulations around silica use. So
Hmm.
the landscape of the stone fabrication industry seems to be evolving and kind of very volatile right now. What what do as a safety professional and being the person, what is it that you feel like you need to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on with some of these changes?
Yeah. I mean, everything from automation to new tools, new materials. For example, I'd mentioned the silica concern with the engineered stone. I think probably 9 out of 10 of our jobs are now with engineered stone, and with it being the compliance is more complex. It's a higher grade of silica that's being exposed to the workers. So it's important that we stick to our silica exposure plan and we do our annual training and we do the air quality monitoring and we have best practices when it comes to housekeeping and cleaning procedures.
So out of all of the different regulations and the changes in
Hmm.
materials and things like that, has there been
Sure.
any one particular change that's caused the greatest impact where you've said, "Oh, this really causes pause. We have to, kind of step back and say, how are we going to deal with this now? Or what changes might we need to make in our process to really align properly with a better way of getting this done?"
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the implementing the engineered stone. There's just a greater chance for silica exposure. So what we did was, like many other shops, and we have a wet shop methodology. When it comes to cutting and fabrication, there's absolutely water involved in all of our processes. There's no dry cutting, no dry grinding. That's like our nemesis right there.
Yeah. So for some of the listeners out there that maybe aren't as familiar as you and I are, could you walk us through the difference between dry and wet shop? What, like the top, you know, top of mind things that come to you?
Sure. So, our particular shop right here, we have a water treatment system, within our shop that we have a closed system. So we recycle our water. And I believe it produces somewhere about 245 gallons of water per minute. And this machine, our water recycling machine, feeds all of our Baca cutting machines, our bridge saw, our three CNCs, our line polishers, and all of our hand grinding that we're doing has water introduced to it, as well as our polishing.
Yeah, and so tell us a little bit about the effect of the water on the silica dust.
Yeah, knocks it down, brings it
Yeah.
down away from the employee. Then it's much easier to deal with it, with the slurry. We have, like I said before, best practices when it comes to housekeeping and cleaning methods.
Yeah, because folks, listeners out there, when we're talking about silica dust, we're talking about stuff that is well, in some shops, if they're not using the proper equipment, it's visible, like, and you can understand what's going on there.
Right.
But even when it's not visible, there's these teeny tiny particles smaller than the tip of a little needle that are in the
Right.
air and
Absolutely.
that are very dangerous, obviously, to your lungs and leading
Mhm.
to diseases like silicosis and things like that. But people think that because they can't see it, it's not necessarily there. But that's why we do these air quality tests in our industry and things like that. And so
Right.
what does the water actually adheres to the silica dust and forces it down? Is that the process?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I do when I'm down on the shop floor, which is most of the day, um, I'll sit there and I'll stand back and watch our fabrication department. And what they do is they have actual control of how much water they introduce to their fabrication process. So there's a fine line from determining whether it's silica dust going up into the air or it's mist from
Yeah.
the water that's
Oh, yeah,
introduced.
right. Yeah.
So, and the one way you can easily tell is, if they did not introduce enough water, they don't have the valve turned on enough. Um, that cloud that's coming up from them will actually keep going up into the air and further itself, and that would make me determine whether that it's actually silica dust.
Yeah.
When it's mist, it kind of goes up a couple feet and then it drops right down. So
Yeah.
that's my way of telling that my employees are introducing the proper amount of water in their process.
And this is such a big thing in the stone industry, and it's certainly top of mind and major discussions right now with OSHA and federal governments, and really making sure that shops around the country adhere to these standards like Eastern
Mhm.
Surfaces. And that's one of the things that I think is so um, it's fantastic about companies like yours because you guys understand the dangers of that, and you've implemented the proper procedures to help
Right.
keep people safe on the job and out of harm's way from prolonged exposure to this very dangerous dust. And
Sure.
then you also have the experience to kind of, like you said, the difference between mist and dust, and things like that. These are things that maybe not everybody thinks about all the time.
Sure.
But in a leadership position in your industry and as a very well respected company, it's not just the apps, the beautiful product that we see after installation,
Mhm.
it's what goes on behind the scenes. And Eastern Surfaces being a very solid, responsible corporation, and making sure that you implement all these things. So now you've
Right.
got these things implemented. You have customers that have deadlines, and you've got product and production that you need to keep up with. It becomes
Right.
a balancing act: productivity, efficiency, and keeping people safe on the job. So as an EHS manager, and having experience in this industry now, and as a safety professional for years, how do you go about keeping safety leadership a priority while managing growth and production and the profitability goals? There's obviously a tendency by some people to to like, cut corners on safety and things like that. I know you guys don't do that, but it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to make safety a part of everything that we do, not just when something goes wrong. So we implement safety procedures into every job that goes through the shop. I work closely with my operations managers and my department managers, and we're out there looking at all different aspects, and then making sure that not only that we're working safe, but we're working proficiently too. Everything from removing the material from the saw table and how we're stacking it on the transport carts. So it's
Mhm.
very important that we keep the flow of the shop going, and really when management, leadership, and safety all work together, when we're all on the same page, that's when the shop operates the safest and the smoothest.
Yep,
So, and
absolutely.
that's where the profitability comes in. There's no lag time.
So we're talking a lot about silica. We're talking a lot about the wet shop versus, the hazards of a dry shop, if you will. And this is always top of mind with people. But for our listeners, let's talk a little bit about slab safety for a minute.
Sure.
Describe, for people who are listening who maybe have not been in a fabrication shop, when we talk about a slab, describe what we're talking about, the weight, the size, those kinds of things.
Sure. I mean, slabs differ. They differ from material. You have your engineered stone, and then you have your granite. And it tends to be like the darker the material, the heavier the material, the more dense. Like absolute black is probably the most dense material out there, in the heaviest. So a slab of absolute black could weigh in excess of 1,000 pounds. And they go anywhere from 8 to 10 foot long by 6 to 7, 8 foot tall, depending on or wide by tall. And so it's very important that we train our employees in material handling. And Natural Stone Institute is a great
Yes. Yeah.
resource for us.
Yep.
We use that as a good training platform for specific material handling on all different types of materials. When either you're moving it with a forklift, with a boom and a clamp, or an overhead crane with a clamp, or an overhead crane with a vacuum lifter. It's important to get that training under the belt. You know, first off when they're first employed, and not only you have to retrain these people as refreshers too, and that's what I'm going through right now, as we had
Yeah.
an incident not too long
Yep.
ago, where we had a failure on a vacuum lifter that caused an injury.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So when we're talking about, there's two takeaways for me that I just heard you say is one is, for folks that are listening out there, we're talking about a slab and what Bob described was a slab. But now I want you to use your imagination and think about there's 30 slabs of
Yeah.
similar weight and size all getting stacked like dominoes in the shop. It is definitely a maneuverability skill and experience to do it in a safety, because if you figure that these clamps are pressing these slabs and they're moving them through, typically there's two people, one driving a forklift and somebody guiding it, right? Do you kind of
Absolutely.
do that same
Yep.
process? And they're putting them into the racks, so that they can be stored safely, and so that people can see them as well when they're looking at different styles of the slabs and things like
Right.
that. So the fabrication shop is really, they're a fascinating shop, but there is a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of moving parts that people really have to be focused in on. The second
Right.
thing that you just focused in on was refreshers. Let's talk a little bit about training and engagement. So you have most likely your formal OSHA training and formal training that you do, and then it
Sure.
sounds like you do things like safety refreshers.
We do.
Describe your overall training program for us. What are the components of it, the cadence, the frequency, and how you approach it?
Yeah. So, aside of the regulatory training that's a must, what we do is we tailor the content, our we tailor our training content to like real world tasks that employees face daily. We use examples from their own work environment so that the training feels immediately applicable.
Mhm.
We include hands-on exercises, we do demonstrations, we do scenario-based discussions, which allows opportunities for our employees to ask questions
Oh, I
and,
like that. Yeah.
practice their skills in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. The scenario based discussions. That's I don't think that I know people probably do it, but I like the way you frame that in as something to hold on to. So listeners jot that one down. Scenario based discussion. So oftentimes people will go in, they have a PDF that they're reading the toolbox talk off of,
Right.
and they get to the end and any questions, right? And most people don't want to ask a question because they want to get back to work or they don't want to be looked at like, well, duh, that was an obvious question. Joe, you've been doing this forever. How come you done? So, but the twist there with the scenario based discussion is you give the scenario that people can ask questions about or poke holes in to get the
Right.
discussion going. Sounds like that's what you do, right?
Sure, sure. Questions,
Yeah,
comments, and concerns, and um, you know, like I had mentioned before about building your rapport with your workers, they feel comfortable and they don't feel out of line if they ask a question or have a concern or have a special comment. I think my crew is very open with us, and they bring up a lot of good points. Makes us look
yep.
at things in different angles.
Right. Now, do you have a demographic of younger workers and more senior workers, bilingual workers? Is it a kind of a mixture of that?
It is definitely a mixture. We're very diverse here at our shop. We have younger groups, older groups, people of different ethnicities. Um, so it could be challenging at some times when it comes to because not everybody is bilingual either. We have a
Right.
number of individuals that speak no English. So that's definitely a challenge, when it comes to training, but we work through it.
Yep. Any special techniques, or do you have individuals that you kind of lean towards to help you with those kinds of situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a handful of translators that do a great job for me.
That's
The
excellent.
thing that I did have to work on with them is, it's not always what you say in a message, it's how you say it. And you can feel the importance of some things when you're talking. And what I was finding was that the translation didn't have the meaning behind it. It
Mhm.
wasn't being said the way I want it to be said. The verbiage was correct, but not the way it was delivered. So
Yeah.
we're working through that right now. That's an ongoing thing for us.
Yeah. It is a big challenge for a lot of people out there that don't have the inherent skill to be able to speak two languages and be
Sure.
able to do it in a way that the meaning, you don't, sometimes the translation comes over too literal and they're missing things in between the words. And I think that's what, really gearing in there. One of the things
Right.
I'm super impressed about in your organization and the way you've structured your plan is that you've really thought through how to engage people that work at Eastern Surfaces, whether they're part of a younger, an older, or
Hmm.
different background culturally, or a different language as their preferred language.
Right.
So, as a comprehensive program, not only are we doing you doing the steps to take to ensure safety and compliance with particular tasks, but then you're also looking at that layer above and saying, all right, how do we get people talking? How do we engage them in a conversation during training? How do we
Right.
give them a scenario to discuss? How do we make sure it's understandable in their language and with the right inflection, with the right word choice? you
Right.
know, um, Organizations that think that safety is all about just checking a box so that we can be compliant are missing the boat. You've got to up your game. And Bob's setting an excellent example here of depth and breadth of a particular program. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a hybrid training environment. You do some things online with Natural Stone Institute
Yeah.
and International Surface Fabricators as well, I'm sure. Um, and then you do things in person. Do you combine the two where people like take the course online and then you do in-person discussions?
Quite often, quite
Yeah,
often we do that. I believe that a lot of our training isn't effective just sitting behind a computer. You have to actually get out in the real world, real environment. And, like just for instance, we're going through vacuum lifter training right now, a refresher. So I'm creating a training program on that, and that's nothing that we can train behind a computer. That's out on the floor with different scenarios, different shapes, different sizes of material,
yeah,
because not all the time are we lifting full slabs that are evenly balanced. Sometimes there's remnants that are in the shape of an L. And there's no possible way to train somebody on how to properly place, the lifting apparatus on that piece behind a computer. It has to be out in the real world.
right. Yep. And that's a luxury that you have is that you can go out there and spend time with your folks. So you guys are at the one location there. Do you multiple locations? That's a nice thing too, because then you can be there as needed when when you need to do that hands-on stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
lots of training, hybrid approach, in person, online, got the safety procedures, the compliance going, and things are well integrated. I would imagine that along the way, you're collecting data points. And these data points are helping you to recognize different kinds of trends and or potentially even a spike or something like, hey, what's this about? We better go take a look and understand more about it. Do you have certain data points that you like to watch that are like your go-to? Like, hey, if I'm watching these 4 or 5 things, I think we're going to be doing pretty good, or they become indicators if they kind of go to a tolerance level of, it's too low now all of a sudden.
Yeah. So when it comes to data, whether it's in-house data or industry data, it helps us, they just don't record incidents in our eyes. It's educational for us to help us drive change and to implement different policies and procedures and best practices. Um, you know, we're not as technically advanced as I would like to be right now, with the safety side of it and the electronic portion or automation portion of it. I think in the near future, because we are looking at a couple different things, it'll make it a lot easier for me to collect that data, that's out there. Right now, I have to go out and search it instead of
Yeah,
it coming to me.
yeah,
But we have a good data analyst right now, and I could go with him. I could go to him with anything, and we can make it work. So I could see in the very near future,
yeah,
that it's going to allow us to evolve, in
yeah.
different ways than we have before.
Well, this would be a great time to give a plug for ISFA, International Surface Fabricators Association. This is a national group, listeners, of
Hmm.
which Bob and his organization is part of. And one of the many things that ISFA does, they're industry advocates for the stone industry. They work very closely with OSHA, federal government regulations, and things like this. But they also supply a lot of tools to their member companies. And one of the tools, Bob, you may be familiar with already, but it's kind of new. It's through the ISFA Academy, powered by Ving, which is great.
Mm.
Allows you to collect a lot of data and track these trends over time through inspections and things like that. So you might want to take that stop there and check that out from your member associate. Being a member of that association
Right.
could help you to start taking those baby steps and collecting that data. But it is important to have, whether it's a manual process or an automated process, that milestone benchmark data where you collect it on an ongoing basis, because over time you can see the trends. Certainly,
Sure.
one very obvious one is air quality, right?
Right.
Things like that over time. Now, how often do you do things like that with air quality? And do you use a third party to come in and do it for you?
Yeah, we do use a third party. We actually schedule with, the University of IUP, and they
Oh,
come in
great.
as a third party, group and kind of do an overall of our operations when it comes to safety. Um, they also they do the air quality monitoring.
That's a nice little partnership to have out there. So one of the common themes of compliance in motion is to highlight these partnerships. So listeners, there's all kinds of associations, Natural Stone Institute, ISFA. Certainly you can reach out to your regional OSHA office, and they will come in and do inspections for you
Right,
proactively to help you along. But you can also reach out to universities who have these
sure.
special programs and special equipment to come in. So it's all about taking in your community and seeing what options are available to help you to raise your game around safety and compliance in these particular areas and stuff like
Right.
that. So as we start rounding the corner towards our end of our time together, kind of a question for you,
Sure.
lesson learned, tips that you might want to share with somebody who's in a similar position with you. Maybe they're just about ready to, take the job as the safety professional in the stone industry. What would be your number one tip to point them at and say, hey, if you're going to do anything, I'd start here. And then I would kind of roll forward into whatever makes sense from that direction.
Yeah. There's a lot to learn in this industry. I've been here for 5 years, and I don't think there has been a day that has gone by in my career here with Eastern Surfaces that I haven't either learned something new or seen something different. It's an ever changing environment, so you have to have an open mind. You have to be innovative because technology it's advancing. Between the automation, and whether your shop or firm can afford certain things, it's coming, and a lot of the automation comes with safety features that they're great. When it comes to the robots that do our cutting with the I'll call it a force field. You break the line and the saw stops. But
Mhm.
definitely you have to have an open mind and be prepared to. I mean, the only way you're going to be successful in your job is to be down on that shop floor,
Yep.
consistent presence, and keeping eyes open.
Yeah, some excellent tips, without a doubt. I think it's very important to be a subject matter expert in your area as a safety professional, but don't think you know it all. Get out there
Right.
on the field. There's
Absolutely.
here it is from a guy who's been doing this for a long time now, and in this particular company, and a day doesn't go by where there's a new observation or a new learning. And I'm sure, Bob, some of them are small things,
Sure.
but others are like, wow, okay, it's those small things that accumulated to that light bulb that went off over a week or something like that.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it's those little learning moments that can make a big difference all along.
For
So
sure.
one of the things that I started doing not too long ago in the compliance and motion here is the wrap up session, and where I
Mm.
get to ask you three quick questions, and you're going to tell me top of mind what you're thinking, right? And we'll
Okay.
close
Sure.
out. We'll close out with that.
All
So
right.
first one. What's
Sure.
your go-to leadership mantra when things get hectic? Deadlines are approaching, safety is important, all this stuff is going. What's your go-to leadership mantra?
So my go-to is, I reach out to my counterparts and I make sure that we're all on the same page. I tell them, what my goals are, what my objectives are, and we come to an equal medium. And like I had mentioned before, when you're on the same page, when operations and the leadership team and the safety team, when they're on the same page, that is definitely when your shop is going to run the safest and the smoothest.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, folks, let's get out there and sync up and make sure we're all heading going
Right.
the right. It's going to be safer and smoother that way. Okay. Here's the next one. What
Sure.
motivates you the most? What motivates you the most about the people at Eastern Surfaces?
We're like a family here at the shop, and when I could walk through the shop and I could see people smiling, having a good day, getting their work done, and staying safe. Going home to their families and showing up yet again the next day and doing it all over again.
Doing it all over again. And the last one is in one word. how would you describe your company's safety culture today?
I think our safety culture is strong.
That's a great
Um,
word.
yeah,
It's the one
I
word.
wanted to say a little bit more than one word, but
But
you know,
go ahead and
um,
go ahead. Yeah, I'll give you that leeway. Sure, why not?
yeah. I mean, when you're down on the shop floor, um, when the people are looking out for each other, they're looking at, you know, vacuum seals, and helping each other out with a heavy lift. The culture's strong. It's not just about compliance at that point. It's not just about checking that box off. It's not a checklist. You can see that the culture is there when the employees are really looking out for them, for each other.
Yep. And that's really a testament to you and the rest of the leadership there at Eastern Surfaces, because it literally has to be a sense of empowerment where people can feel that they can contribute and get their job done safely and to the standards of the company in a way, and the leadership supports that. So as usual, it all starts with empowerment, people and leadership, and workers taking ownership of safety and compliance out on that floor. So, Bob, I
Right.
want to thank you so much for participating with us today. It's been great having you. We covered a lot of ground, a lot of
Right.
interesting takeaways for our listeners. Thank you so much for that. They'll be
Thank you
thanking
for
you as
having
they
me.
fill up their notes there. And
Right.
as usual, folks, my name is Tony DeAscentis, your host for Compliance in Motion. Greatly, thank you so much for carving time out of your day and tuning in with us. It's been a pleasure for having you here with us. And as usual, to our listeners, please subscribe, like, and share this podcast with somebody else you know that can benefit from today's story and the stories of the many others that we've had an opportunity to have on our show. Bob, have a great day, and thank you so much.
Thank you. You as well, Tony. Have a great day.